GALP.
Man, I'm so hungry. I wonder where the nearest McDonald's is. Excuse me, do you know where the nearest Macca's is?
すみません。英語が話せません。Sorry, no English.
Don't be like our boy Gaza. Be prepared next time you're in Japan. Get Wi-Fi coverage across Japan and Google where to go. Rent a mini Wi-Fi router or eSIM with Ninja Wi-Fi. Trusted by 21 million customers worldwide, Ninja Wi-Fi provides great service for an affordable price. Visit ninjawifi.com and use the code GAL for 20% off.
Okay, before we get into the disclaimer, I'm just going to say that this episode isn't a reveal, it's not a leak for Warriors Orochi 5, but rather my wish list for the game. We had mentioned in the previous episode where we're testing out this idea where it's basically a fantasy Muso draft, and this is my fantasy Muso draft for Warriors Orochi 5, aka Muso Orochi 4. For you new folks, GALP is a weekly gaming discussion podcast under the GALP Podcast Network. We talk about all sorts of games from big AAA titles all the way to awesome indie games, but our forte is Japanese games. Expect that a lot. We can be found anywhere where you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and now on YouTube. Whilst you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star review, and remember, if you want to join in on the fun, then follow us on all of our socials, whether that may be Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, and X, all at GALP Podcast. Okay, so normally it's a tradition for us on the podcast to have a wish list, and we end up making our predictions into reality. As a reminder, we did successfully predict Samurai Warriors 5, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, Fairy Tail RPG, as well as Persona 5 Scramble, to name a few. But yeah, I want to put this wish list out into the universe and manifest it, because I was low-key disappointed with Warriors Abyss. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the game for what it was, but myself and some fans wanted more of a traditional Musou experience. When we saw that trailer initially, people thought it was going to be Orochi style of game. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. If we got a Warriors Orochi 5, what would it be? How would it work? And what characters are going to be in it? Koei in recent years have treated the Orochi series as a backup title, often releasing a game when stuff has hit the fan, especially when games aren't received as well. They're often made using previous Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors assets for a quick turnaround with minimal effort. One can argue that the original Orochi series was created due to Dynasty Warriors 6's poor response. However, the original game would have been more a title that Koei were testing out for a new IP that started way long before the development and release of Dynasty Warriors 6, hence why they would have used those assets from Dynasty Warriors 5 and Samurai Warriors 2, I think. Orochi 2 was more of an expansion game, and think of it as the Extreme Legends to the Orochi series. I believe Orochi 2 was like a prequel, if I'm not mistaken, to the first Orochi game. And, fun reminder, Orochi 3 was never meant to come overseas. We had mentioned it on the podcast before. It was a game that had really brought the community together, especially after a merger between these two massive companies. Truly the golden age of the TK family. Notice how I said TK family, because obviously back then it was Koei Tecmo. No, it wasn't. It was Tecmo Koei. What? See, I'm starting to lose my memory here. I'm not really going to go into it, as I really want to do a special mini-series focusing on past Orochi games. So that was kind of the brief overview. Orochi 4 as well came out of nowhere and purely felt as if Koei had this game ready, just in case Dynasty Warriors 9 was a flop. And at the time, it truly felt like a breath of fresh air. It wasn't the best Orochi game. However, without it, we wouldn't have games like Warriors Abyss. Why do I say this? There are many bosses in Warriors Abyss that were reskins of monsters in Orochi 4. And in fact, a lot of the NPCs are direct sort of rips from Orochi series. For example, they have the Orochi officer skins as well as the soldier skins. So maybe Orochi 4 wasn't that bad. Where do we move on from here? Are we ever going to get a game as meaningful as Warriors Orochi 3? Probably not, but I think Koei could try. And I really hope Warriors Orochi could get back to what it was. If we were to get an Orochi 5, I think Koei would be aiming for an early 2027 release to coincide with Muso Orochi's 20th anniversary, probably with an official announcement at TGS 2026. I want Koei to break that Guinness World Record for the most playable characters in a video game for the 3rd time running. I want every single character on launch, not through DLC packs or anything like that. Imagine Samurai Warriors 4 characters, including Spirit of Sanada characters, Dynasty Warriors 8 characters, with the inclusion of Zhao Kang, because after all, Zhao Kang does technically have a Dynasty Warriors 8 moveset from Warriors All-Stars. You might be wondering, why not include Samurai Warriors 5 characters or Dynasty Warriors Origin characters? And to be fair, it's more than possible if Koei wants to do a Warriors Orochi reboot, that would make a lot of sense, because both games have smaller rosters and more up-to-date mechanics, although very different art styles. So, you know, that's never been an issue in the Orochi series before, but we're kind of moving from this ink and paint art style, that sort of shell-shaded. Shell-shaded? What? Fish, come on. Speak English properly, man. Come on. Cell-shaded. I think I pronounced that correctly. Finally, versus the more realistic-looking Dynasty Warriors Origins. It could work. And I think it would be very successful if Koei did a reboot, especially if the game played similarly to Dynasty Warriors Origins, with a branching story and the ability to join other factions. That's the one thing I really miss about the Orochi series. The fact that characters are fighting with one another and ultimately come together to defeat Orochi. Wouldn't it be cool to have a more strategic game with soldiers you can send orders to, like Dynasty Warriors Origin, or being able to hyper attack in such a crazy way, or being able to character switch in a similar way to Samurai Warriors 5. As interesting as that would be, I don't want that. I want a game that is a love letter to the Musou fans, a game that would bring the Koei Tecmo community together once again. And the only way I see that is if we have a bunch of characters like how it's always been. I loved how Warriors All-Stars, even with its small character roster, gave us characters that aren't normally in a Musou game, adapting their combat style perfectly to Musou. Let's see the return of DOA characters like Mary Rose and Honoka, characters from the many Koei Tecmo series like Deception, Knight of Azure, Neo, Tokiden, Haruka Beyond the Stream of Time. It's very interesting, actually. Haruka Beyond the Stream of Time, a Ruby Party title, had its first Western appearance in a Warriors game. Let's see more of that. I think it intrigued a lot of people to see for the first time. During Warriors All-Stars life cycle, character polls were put up and it revealed many people want to see more otome game characters featured in games like Geten no Hana, an otome game set during the Sengoku Jidai, a game where you can romance Nobunaga Oda, as well as Angelique, Ruby Party's first title, the first of Koei's neo-romance game. In fact, this game can be considered to be one of the first otome games in general. Now, Koei has done a lot of firsts. Koei has made the first sort of Musou games. I don't know about strategy games, but they were the first to make otome games. They were the first to make Galge, and I believe also Eroge as well, which we did mention in a previous episode, but I'm not going to get any more into that. You can wiki it and Google it as much as you want. We can also get characters from modern Atelier series like Ryza or Yumiya. One series I'd love to see characters from in Orochi 5 is Blue Reflection. It sounds a bit dumb, but that's the beauty of the Orochi series. Whether it's intended to or not, the Orochi series brought Koei fans together and Tecmo fans together from many different series. They make great games. Why not show it off a bit more with this? Final point on characters is cameo characters. Orochi 3 had a few characters that were not even Koei Tecmo IP. For example, I think we had seen some characters from Soul Calibur 5. Now, these are always interesting, but can be messy down the line due to licensing. In a perfect world, where Koei and Capcom didn't have legal battles, I would love to see Sengoku Basara characters. Imagine both Magoichis interacting with one another. More likely, cameos could be Neptunia characters. Koei does have a history with publishing the Neptunia series back in the day and have a really good working relationship with Compile Heart, but they also have a good relationship with Marvelous. So let's see some Senran characters in there as well. I think it would be one of the first times in a long time where we would see Senran characters actually in with their full movesets and everything in a game that I think a lot of people would appreciate them in. So Let's bring them Senran characters in. It would also be cool to see Eve from Stellar Blade, Juliet from Lollipop Chainsaw, Aya from Oni-Chanbara. Now, I'm sort of heading into Warriors Orochi 5 being the Super Smash Bros. Of hack and slash games. Let's do it. So many character ideas just flowing out of my brain today. This was kind of supposed to be a short episode. I might have to split it into a second part. It would be nice to see Square Enix characters, like Final Fantasy VII cast. Imagine Sephiroth teaming up with Orochi and Nobunaga. That would be cool, right? One thing I think would be really awesome is Platinum Game characters. So Koei Tecmo is working with Platinum Games on Ninja Gaiden 4. So maybe they can work on something and maybe allow Koei to use 2B or Bayonetta as playable characters in Orochi 5. Obviously, you'd need Square Enix and Nintendo's and Sega's permission for that as well. But I don't know. Like, having these characters as console exclusives would be really cool as well, you know? Like maybe having Bayonetta for the Switch 2 version, or having Link return in the Nintendo Switch version as well. That would be cool. I think I kind of exhausted myself talking about characters, and I want to know from you guys, if Koei was making an Orochi 5, what characters would you like to see and why? And just let us know in the comments section below on YouTube and on Spotify. I think we've got more time. I was thinking, bruh, what is this? We need more time to talk about the game. So I'm gonna talk about the rest of it. How would the story work? Orochi 3 had a very definitive ending, and somehow Koei Tecmo decided to desecrate that with Orochi 4's weird story that would have included both Greek and Norse gods. It was weird. We all kind of accepted it at the time because of how much Dynasty Warriors 9 sucked. There's a few ideas I have in my head, two of which are very much Hell related. As I mentioned in previous episodes, I'd always wanted an Orochi game set in Hell. It's an interesting setting with many interpretations. Most religions have a concept of evil and hell, etc. So Koei could decide to make another retelling of Dante's Inferno. Fun fact, actually, Koei was the first games developer and publisher to create a game based on the Divine Comedy, known as Dante no Shinyoku Yori. It's a very deep cut, bish. Very deep cut. Yes, it is. Just so you know, I'm full of all of the Koei Tecmo knowledge. I don't even think that there's anyone at Koei Tecmo that knows that. Maybe some senior game devs in the Japanese office. Maybe not. I would love to do like a little quiz, like a Koei Tecmo quiz with like the Japanese Koei Tecmo office. I think that would be really cool. If you want to see that, let me know. We'll get that arranged. But yeah, if Koei Tecmo decided to follow the Dante's Inferno structure, then it means we can have 9 to 10 story chapters, one chapter for each circle of hell, as well as the center. The story itself is in the public domain. Koei could flesh it out and have other characters within the Muso series on each circle best suited to their personality. For example, possibly you can meet and fight Dong Zhuo in the second circle of hell, known as Lust. Now, how would characters end up in hell? And, you know, here we could just basically take a leaf out of Warriors Abyss's book and have them summoned by a lesser demon who wishes to rise up in the ranks and usurp the throne. You can even bring back Enma and Goma if you wanted to. What's great about using the Dante's Inferno is that you have the opportunity to create very unique stages, as each circle of hell in the story seemingly has its own climates and its own atmosphere. You can even structure the game similarly to Orochi 3, where you need to go backwards to go forwards. For example, let's use Enma and Goma from Warriors Abyss as the game's big bad guy, as placeholders, purely. The game sort of starts off with Enma summoning you to help him fight Goma, the one who presides over hell at the moment. But after chapter 1, you defeat Goma pretty easily, similarly to how Orochi 3 was structured, right, where you try and defeat Yamato no Orochi and fail, but in this case you succeed. So you help out Enma, and you find out he's not actually a good guy. It's hell after all. There's no good guys. And he sends you back to the first circle of hell, where you're basically forced to create bonds with the rest of the characters throughout hell and rise up against Enma and defeat him, so that basically all these Muso characters that were not supposed to be there could leave. How is this related to Orochi? Well, in this idea of Orochi 5, I kind of see Orochi and his crew as the good guys. Their intentions aren't the best. Orochi wants to be in power again, but he needs the help of these Musou characters because he's not the most powerful in Hell. Each circle of Hell will have its own unique guardian or gatekeeper, and Koei can decide to either use existing Musou characters for this, or, which I would really prefer, completely unique characters that represent the various circles of Hell. So you have a character that represents lust, one that represents gluttony, that kind of thing. But yeah, each circle of Hell can have its own unique guardian. That was my first idea of Orochi 5's story. The second one is also Hell-based, but more focusing on Shinto's concept of Hell, Yomi, as detailed in the Kojiki. I don't know too much about this, but obviously there is that creation story with Izanagi and Izanami, etc. And there is a lot of things that can kind of link in because you have characters from Shintoism, you have characters from Buddhism, you have characters from Shintoism in this game. In previous series, right? You know, Susanoo, for example, being a character. Orochi himself being a character as well. You have characters like the mystic characters from Chinese mythology. You also have characters from Journey to the West. So it would be really nice to sort of see a little bit more of the Shinto characters in there, as well as the different kami that you can interact with that might potentially help you on your way in this sort of idea. I think at the same time you can sort of integrate Izanami and Izanagi as well. I think that would be very interesting. I haven't fleshed this bit out, but let me know how you'd want an Orochi 5 story to be, because the only thing I'm thinking about at the moment is that Dante's Inferno idea, and I don't think I'm going to think of anything better than that at the moment without thinking very long and hard. Someone's going to clip that out of context. Fuck. But yeah, let me know. And we can discuss it further on the podcast. And actually, you know what? I would love to speak to some of the Musou community as well. Love to have Chris back on the podcast to kind of discuss what we would love for an Orochi 5. So if you want that sort of discussion, let me know and we can facilitate that. And we can have a longer episode. I know that there's some people that were requesting longer episodes on GALP, and the only reason we have shorter episodes is because, well, it's just me at the moment. And if we had guests, then yes, our episodes would be longer. Expect hour to 2 hour episodes for guests, etc. So that's something that I am looking to do, maybe bringing one guest on a month. I believe we have already contacted a few guests, some from different walks of the gaming industry, some that are focused on different genres within the gaming industry, because at the end of the day, GALP is a place where we can also learn about the different genres, about the different fandoms. Even though, you know, we're primarily focused on Japanese games, it's always nice to learn more. For example, I'm very intrigued after coming back from Japan, learn more about otome games, because if you go into any sort of secondhand shop or just in general any game store, there is a lot of otome games, game series I've never really heard of before, games that are even published and developed by Koei Tecmo that I never knew existed. So yeah, expect that kind of stuff in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week with another episode of GALP. I don't know if it's going to be the Monster Hunter week. Probably by the time I get my thoughts out on Monster Hunter, the game is going to be like really old. I don't know. But I don't know. That's also another thing. I think probably if I do a Monster Hunter episode, I would need to have it as a discussion, because it would be very difficult for me to talk about Monster Hunter, because believe it or not, Monster Hunter Wilds is my first ever Monster Hunter game, and my only other experience with this style of game is Koei's offerings, so like Wild Hearts and Tokiden. So yeah, that being said, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.